So over the weekend I visited Papa. He's 90 years old, suffering from his cancer, and is now pretty much in and out of bed most of the day. He's up for about 30 minutes to an hour. I think I had him for nearly an hour and a half at some time. Then he'll go and lay down for another 2, 3, 4, 5 hours and then back up. Last time I saw him in person was probably like 2 years ago when he came over and visited Mum. And now he definitely is looking like a skeleton wearing skin, but it was really refreshing seeing how mentally aware he was, cracking some jokes, telling some stories. You know, Papa was in the military for 24 years. He joined up and went to Korea, and was with Turara, was a platoon sergeant on the Hook when the war finished, and then went to Vietnam as the RSM of 8RAR. And I've never actually had Papa talk to me about his military career. He's always kept it quiet. He came back and was the command sergeant major of Western Australia, or Western Force, or whatever it was. Got a commission, then got out, and then became a professional fisherman for like 13, 14 years, and pretty much moved on and never really spoke a lot about his military career to many of us in the family at all. So it was really, really nice sitting there with him, and he just started opening up and telling him stories, and I started telling him some stories about my military career, my experiences, and you could see he was connecting with it, and it made him feel very comfortable talking some more, and I got to ask him so many questions that I'd always wanted to, even about transitioning from defence, mental health, geez, even like hostages and his experiences losing friends. And it was really, really intriguing to see just the absolute parallels on the military side. But what I really took away from the weekend, it really sort of inspired me. You know, at the moment I've been really trying to write down a bit of my own IP, get my own thoughts out of my head into a structure that I can pass on to people to teach or to help or whatever. But purpose and authenticity were two key words that the whole weekend just kept smacking me in the face. You know, Papa is 90 years old. He's a shadow of his former self physically, but mentally he's there. His mental health and his emotional health, his purpose are stronger than ever. And you know, Nana, she's there, she's 86, and she's fighting fit and running around and helping out and doing all this. And just the sweetest lady. And Papa, just the consummate gentleman, is with so much dignity and so much poise, but it's all authentic. You know, he has every reason to be angry at so much or resentful, but he shows the bravest face, and every time he sees Nana, you see his face light up. There's my gorgeous girl, and puts his hand out to touch her, and they'll sit there and have a drink. And even when he's talking to me, he's so polite. Thank you. And yeah, it was really, really insightful me to see someone who, that with everything else going on in the world at the moment, was just so content with the love and happiness he had around him. There was no frustrations that he couldn't go outside, that he knows he's coming towards the end of his life, and he's very real about that. And just seeing the value he placed on what was actually important, how he carried himself. You know, there was really, really impressive to see someone at that period of their life just so authentic with who they are, so loving, so compassionate, so genuine. And just seeing that his purpose, you know, his body is physically failing him left, right and centre, but his mind and his heart are focused on being there for as long as he can for his family, for Nana, and to be there and have conversations. You know, when I left, he said, I look forward to seeing you at Christmas. You can just see his head and his heart will carry him there. It's just whether his body will. And it throws me back to those times when, you know, running selection courses I've talked about, where you get the point where you'd physically have to stop the activity because the guys who were doing the activity were so mentally focused and emotionally invested that they would let their bodies break before failing the activity. You know, that's the point where you realise you've achieved what you need to achieve. You have them on their characteristics, their personality. The rest we can train. The physical attributes, the professional competencies, we can train the rest. we talked about COVID, we talked about everything. Papa talked about his time growing up he and Nana growing up during the Second World War as kids. And, just the value they placed on the family unit, making sure they were always prepared for whatever they could do, making sure that everyone knew how loved they were. I've experienced a lot of death, friends, family, relatives, during the wars. Even just growing up, Nana was one of 12 children, and 5 of them died within their infant years. Nana's mother died when she was 13 years old, and she was left to raise the majority of the kids after that from a nunnery, and then on from there. And she's 5'1", and the power, presence, and poise that comes from that woman is just incredible. And again, just so proper. Yes and no, thank you, please and thank yous. Just the spark and the spirit. They don't build people like that these days. And we sit here having struggles with mental health and finding personal purpose and where to put emotional investment into achieving satisfaction what we're doing. And I sat there with a weekend with 2 absolute living legends, just ignited by their purpose for each other, the love for their family, just so mentally sound while their bodies were at that point in their life where they were failing them. And it just gave me so much perspective, especially at a time like now. I definitely know, walking away from there, that during these times where I might be struggling to find my own motivation, struggling to really find that purpose to put my investment into, that, just knowing that I have those people in my lives, those grandparents to look up to, that influence they have on my life, even when they're at their absolute physical weakest, is just their emotional strength just absolutely flowed through and really inspired me to pull my head out of my own pit of whatever and get going. And my papa, his name's Graham Joseph Charles Lee, Graham, Graymn, and that is my middle name, Heston Graham Russell, Graymn. And I've spent probably the last few months wandering around trying to find some purpose, some inspiration, and the whole time I've had him in my life, and 2, I've been carrying his name with me throughout my life. And it's sad that only towards the end of potentially his that I really realised that. But again, it's sort of bittersweet that it provides me with that further inspiration. All the things he lived through, all the hardships. He was telling me stories about, in Korea when he had to go and every morning they were still forced to shave. He had to go and chip off a block of ice and melt it down to shave. Talking about stories of just every day on the hook. One day a mortar round landed and killed a bloke. When he became platoon sergeant, it's because his best mate, who was a platoon sergeant, went on a patrol, entered into a minefield, called the mine freeze drill, then made a move himself and was blown up. And I talked about when I lost my Corporal Scott Smith during my deployment to Afghanistan in 2012. I asked him, how did you deal with it during the war? I came back 2 days later from the field, called Mum, bawled my eyes out, wrote a letter to his commanding officer, and then sort of move on and grieve them when he came back. Papa was literally there with, the threat outside his trench. And he told me he went around the back of the position, sat down, cried his eyes out, wrote a letter to his mate, cried his eyes out again, ripped it up, went back, took charge of the platoon and did what he needed to do. He sits there telling a story. He was in his early 20s. Just that strength of character. Again, all I can say is they don't make them like that these days. I mean, they do, but there's just so much else going on in the world. Anyway, I wanted to make this personal vlog just to really remind myself of the inspiration I've drawn from this weekend. I really have often found myself getting so carried away with chasing the next excitement, missing travel, missing visiting friends overseas, looking for something more exciting, the next project, the next whatever. And the whole time I sat there watching Nana and Papa across from the table, they celebrate their 65th wedding anniversary this year. Papa was 25, Nana was 21. He was walking down the stairs at the army headquarters in Western Australia. Saw Nana walking up the stairs. She was in the army. And he asked her out. It was his 25th birthday. Asked her to go out. And she said no. He then followed up the next week. She said yes. 6 weeks later, they were engaged. 6 months later, they were married. They've been together 65 years. And every morning watching him as she walks past, good morning, my darling. Hello, dear. Touching each other's hand or shoulder, and then sitting there at 6 o'clock, cheersing each other. To your health. No, to your health. Yes, many more years together. It's just so beautiful to see him. Again, get caught up in this whole superficial world and complaints of what we don't have. And I sat there watching two people just embracing and celebrating what they do have. And while it might seem not much, it was all they needed. And it was really, really inspirational to see that purpose in each other. That purpose that was literally keeping them alive. That authenticity and strength of character. Just being a good person. Papa was always good at his job. He always encouraged us to be the best we could be, but just his personal ethos, his personal values, the way he conducts himself. You know, you could never see, there was never any pretending, pretentiousness, anything but authenticity and true purpose to doing the best he could and being the best he could while doing that. Anyway,